Welcome to the Saturday Cadence podcast. I'm Blake Biscardi, and remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football. Week 11 saw a lot of really competitive games. However, the upsets evaded the top teams. So the college football playoff picture, for the most part, stays intact. We're going to break down all of the Week 11 games here on this episode of Saturday Cadence. Welcome in. My name is Blake Biscardi, and we're going to start with Oregon at Iowa. This was one of those trap games that we discussed on the Thursday episode previewing this weekend's games. And when I watched this game competitively, you just know when you look at a game at Iowa, this is Oregon's first trip to Kinnick. And I'm looking at the setup of this game, and I'm saying, okay, Oregon's got some injuries. Oregon's coming across the country. They're going to Iowa. It's November. The weather's going to be bad. The script was written for this game to be ultra competitive. It was written to be played in Iowa style of football. Now, one of the questions I had about Oregon was, can Oregon play and win a game that style of football, which is ugly, running the football in the rain, sloppy? How is it going to go? And Oregon wins the game by 2 points, 18-16. And that's going to come down to that safety that happened on that punt. So that really ended up being the difference in the game. But when I'm seeing Oregon and Dante Moore, that throw that Dante Moore made down the sideline on that final game-winning drive to set up the field goal was unbelievable. That was as precise of a throw as you can make in the sport. And again, Moore only threw for 112 yards because you really couldn't throw the football that much in a game that style. It was a monsoon at times, and it was light rain, and it was just wet and sloppy. And Dante Moore, when he had to, made the plays. And Mark Gronowski for Iowa, when he had to, also made the plays. But the big difference in this game was Oregon on the ground. Noah Whittington, he carried the ball 17 times for 118 yards. Oregon as a team ran for 261. That right there to me shows that Oregon is a complete team. Now, how good are the Ducks? That we're going to find out over the coming weeks. And if they get into the college football playoff, Oregon still has big games against USC and Washington. So looking at the Ducks schedule, there is a lot to play for still for the Ducks. They have a really difficult November. And if they win out, they're going to earn their place in the college football playoff. Washington losing hurt them at Wisconsin, but Oregon, again, controls its destiny to get to the college football playoff, and Dan Lanning's team won the game ugly. Their defense also played extremely well. Now, again, I know we're talking about your defense against Iowa's offense. I understand Iowa does not have that much of an offense. I do get it. But Iowa has a better offense this year. But again, it's, can you make the plays? And Oregon's defense did make the plays. And you know what? That fourth quarter, Iowa showed that they're a pretty good team because Iowa went right down the field 90-plus yards to score a touchdown to take the lead 16-15. And Iowa threw the ball right down the field. Gronowski was really great on that drive. This was a really good football game, and one of those teams had to lose, and the safety ended up being the difference in the game on the scoreboard. Now, again, there could have been an extra point kicked for Iowa, so then at that point, it would have been 17-15 without the 17-16, rather, without the safety. But still, this game was an old school classic Big Ten game that, to me, showed the mettle of both of these teams. Iowa did deserve to be ranked. Iowa is one of the above average teams in the Big Ten. Oregon, they found a way to win on the road. That happens to a lot of top teams. You're going to have to find a way to win a game sometimes. You can't control the weather. You can't control your injuries. You can control who you have on your team and the product that you put out there. And the product that Oregon put out there did enough to win the game. And sometimes just winning the game is enough. And in this case for Oregon, winning the game was enough. And they were able to do that 18-16. Dante Moore, again, good when he needed to be. But Noah Whittington, he is the storyline of the game for Oregon. Over 100 yards of rushing. Oregon ran for 7.3 yards a carry on Iowa's defense. That is stellar, especially in the rain when you know you're going to have to run the football, when they know that you have to run the football. 7.3 yards a carry compared to Iowa, who ran it for 2.3 yards per carry. Huge difference there. Now, Iowa in the throw game, they were better. They threw for almost 8 yards of pass, Oregon just five. So, again, that could be cause for concern for Oregon against a tougher opponent. But I think what also Will Stein, the offensive coordinator for Oregon, his takeaway from this game could be, all right, what if we are a run first offense that can throw instead of being a spread vertical passing game offense? What if this Oregon team's identity really is best found in running the football first to open up the throw game? That was one of my takeaways. And Oregon was kind of forced into it. They were kind of backed into a corner. And you know what? Maybe that's what it takes for Oregon to realize that. So we're going to see, certainly as they finish out the schedule with Minnesota and USC and Washington, if they do adopt and move to that style, or if they just stick with the traditional Oregon offense. BYU and Texas Tech. This was another great game in the Big 12. And if you are Brent Yormark and the Big 12, you didn't want the margin to be this big, but this was the result that you could have, in quotes, hoped for, because I'm sure they don't hope for results. But when you're trying to be a multi-bid league, you'd rather have as many undefeated or one-loss teams as possible to position yourself to be in the college football playoff. And that's what happened here. Texas Tech absolutely dominated BYU. And we talked about this last week in the preview show, that this was in play, this kind of game. You saw the spread was at double digits at 10.5. I thought BYU needed things to happen, needed bounces to fall their way, needed turnovers in this game. That is really what I thought the pathway to victory was going to be for BYU. Instead, BYU gave the turnovers. They had 3. So that was cause of concern for me right there. Baron Morton played well, threw for over 200 yards. They ran for 149 yards. So it was a pretty balanced day for Texas Tech. But again, we told you the Red Raiders have a really good defense. They're opportunistic. They created the turnovers, and now they're positioning themselves to make a run in the college football playoff, because this team, Texas Tech, we know Baron Morton has played well all year. The game he missed was the game they lost. So with Baron Morton at quarterback, Texas Tech is undefeated, and the College Football Playoff Selection Committee could use that as a factor in evaluating Texas Tech at the end of the season, even if the Red Raiders lose another game. So Texas Tech, again, we're talking about these teams that can make a push for a top 4 seed in the college football playoff that are not in the Big Ten or in the SEC. And when I looked down the rankings, who I saw, it was going to be Texas Tech, Oregon potentially, depending on certain results. I know Indiana in front of them, that's not a team they're going to be able to jump because of head-to-head. They avoided catastrophe yesterday. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Texas Tech, Notre Dame was that other team. I don't think the Irish with 2 losses will be able to climb that high. So the Red Raiders have the best chance to crash that top 4 seed and potentially earn a bye in the first round of the college football playoff. And getting a win over BYU 29-7 is one of the great ways to do that, because it showed that this is a complete team. This is a top 10 win for Texas Tech. And they forced turnovers. They did everything they needed to do. They played a clean game. And for Texas Tech, this was a huge victory for the program. This was the first top 10 game in Lubbock since the Michael Crabtree game against Texas in 2008. So huge win for Lubbock, or in Lubbock, for Texas Tech. And I want you to keep their eye on them for pushing for that top 5 spot, because again, Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, they all have games that could give them losses left on their schedule. Then you look at Texas A&M, they still have to play Texas. Then you look at Indiana, their rest of the season's pretty much, they're very favored to win those games. Indiana should enter the Big Ten championship game undefeated now that they escaped Penn State. Then Ohio State still has to play in Ann Arbor against Michigan. Win that game, you're going to the Big Ten championship against Indiana. So again, teams in front of Texas Tech, there are losable games ahead on the schedules for all of those teams. And if you're the Red Raiders, you see the rest of your schedule is you have UCF next week, then a late bye week, which can honestly be a good thing for the run for the playoff, because then you get fresh toward the end of the year, and then West Virginia to end the season on the 29th. Then you're looking at the Big 12 championship game. So Texas Tech, prime position. They're in the driver's seat now in the Big 12, looking like they're going to make the conference championship game. And then can they get into the top 5? That is a storyline that we're going to monitor over the next couple of weeks. Alabama had LSU, and this game was really interesting because Alabama was pretty much in firm control there with that late touchdown in the first half, 17-3. And then all of a sudden, LSU tacked on a field goal. And you're like, okay. Then LSU had a chance to score a touchdown, and they couldn't convert in Alabama territory, so they settled for a field goal in the fourth quarter. That I think was that was the moment where Alabama really won the game. Because yes, it came back to a one-score game, sure, but the way that drive was going, the spot that they needed to be in, they could not convert there to get into the end zone. That was where that game was lost. But LSU showed some fight without Brian Kelly. But again, Alabama finds a way to win. So the Crimson Tide, again, if you want to say the SEC's mid, if you want to say LSU's not that good of a team, this is that great of a win. I just told you with Oregon, it's a rivalry game here between the Tide and the Tigers. It's just how this works sometimes. You're going to have those games where you just have to win. I'm not going to tell you that because Alabama beat LSU that I think they can win the national championship now. I'm not going to say that they're the best team in the SEC or that they should jump Texas A&M. I'm not going to overreact to that game that way. But again, I respect Alabama for winning the game. They found a way to win it. They were in control of the game. They never lost control of the game. But when it got hairy, the defense stood. And that's a big thing that you want to see for the Crimson Tide is can that defense stand tall? Because you're looking across this schedule now. Oklahoma is next week. That's a revenge spot from last year. This is going to be a top 15 game. And then you got Eastern Illinois and the Iron Bowl. So Alabama, if you can get past Oklahoma, you're setting up for an Iron Bowl and Jordan Hare. That game is tricky. That game is always tricky. No Hugh Freeze. Auburn showed a lot of fight against Vanderbilt on Saturday. So again, this is something that we're going to monitor for Alabama. It's not just a difficult game against Oklahoma. They still have the Iron Bowl to go to. And how many times has Auburn played spoiler to Alabama in a spot similar to this? That is something we're going to have to watch throughout November because Alabama is a contender. Alabama's in prime position to make the SEC championship and the college football playoff and even have a bye. But they've got to get wins in those two games in order to protect that. I want to go now to, I mean, this game was just ridiculous. Indiana, Penn State. Okay, this game was in Happy Valley. And Penn State, I said it against Ohio State last week. I said that this is still a top 25 roster in college football. They could give fits. I would not be surprised to see them cover. And then on the Thursday show this last week, I'm like, you know what? I just don't know if Penn State has anything left. I said, I need them to show me that they do because I can see it on paper, but I need to see it translate on the field. And you know what? Early in this game, Indiana was in control, but then Penn State scored in that second quarter. And you're like, okay, we're going to have a ball game here. You go into the half 17-7. That's not terrible, right? So, okay, they play Ohio State to a field goal in the first half last week. They're down 10 points to Indiana this week at the half. This time they're at home. And then all of a sudden, okay, you're going into the fourth quarter. You're still down by 10. How is this going to shake out? Then you score a touchdown. And you're like, okay, now there's some belief that's happening here. There is some belief in State College. Then Fernando Mendoza throws a pick. And now you're like, oh boy. Like Nicholas Singleton was huge in that fourth quarter. Katron Allen was big. But then Fernando Mendoza throws a pick. Now you score again. Now you take the lead. There's a minute left in the game. Can Jim Knowles' defense get a stop in this spot? Ohio State fans watching this, like, okay, I'm not surprised. Indiana's going right down the field. You know, the early years of the Jim Knowles experiment and experience. And again, this is not a slight. It takes time. And empirical data would show that in the early days of him in Columbus, this exact thing happened where teams at the end of the game, they needed to stop and they just go right down the field. Indiana did that. And when I tell you that Fernando Mendoza didn't play well all game, but he found something on the last drive, you just take it for what I said. He didn't play well, and he found something on the last drive. There's people handing him the Heisman Trophy because of that last drive, and like, this is his Heisman moment. Okay, well, since when do we have Heisman moments against 3-5, 3-6 football teams on the road when you did not play well? You had just over 200 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception leading up to that touchdown pass at the end. Where did Fernando Mendoza earn the Heisman Trophy? I'm not saying he can't win it. I'm not saying this isn't a great win for Indiana. I just want to know why we're handing out the trophy in the second weekend of November because of a game-winning drive that is because of your miscommunication and mistake throwing a late interception in the fourth quarter when you could have closed the game out, then now all of a sudden we're handing out the Heisman Trophy because on a 3-5 team, you go down the field in a minute and you throw a game-winning touchdown pass. Now, I think for sure that Indiana showed a lot of grit and heart, and that's a great win for the Hoosiers. But that doesn't tell me they can win a national championship. That doesn't tell me that Fernando Mendoza can win the Heisman Trophy. That doesn't tell me that they're going to dominate Ohio State. Now, what it shows me is that this team can face adversity and they can overcome it, which that's a good trait to have in the college football playoff. I think Indiana can win a game or two in the college football playoff, and depending on their matchups, they may be able to get to a semifinal and even national championship game. What if they get to Miami? I'm not saying that those things can't happen. I just don't want to overreact to a game against a 3-5 team in this way. Now, again, I have respect for Penn State because they have a top 25 roster. And you're like, well, you're talking on both sides of your mouth. You're saying this is a 3-5 team, but they have a top 25 roster. Both of those things are true. Penn State is 3-5. They lost. Now they're 3-6. They do have a top 25 talent roster. They're figuring things out. But Penn State couldn't figure out a way to close the game. That's been what Penn State football is. So, yes, this is a good win for Indiana, for Curt Cignetti, for Fernando Mendoza. But Omar Cooper, that catch in the back of the end zone was as remarkable of a catch as you will see this season. I mean, his left toe by about 4 inches of a blade of grass touches the back of the end zone right a millisecond before his right toe goes down out of bounds. It was almost like he hovered in the back. It was spectacular. I mean, the drama in that final quarter in this Penn State Indiana game was cinema. It really, really was. And that's why I said this is a great win for Indiana. And it would have been a program defining win for Penn State here, finally getting over the top 5 game hump. But they did not. Okay. Now they need to win out to have a shot at a bowl game. But Indiana, again, respect. You go down the field, respect. Like I said with Oregon, sometimes you got to find a way to win. And Indiana had to find a way to win. They sure did. I just don't want to hand out the Heisman Trophy because of a drive like that. That's the only thing for me. Just don't hand out trophies in November. I don't even like handing them out in December. I think the Heisman should be an after the season thing. I mean, we don't need to get into that today. But I don't like handing out the Heisman Trophy where there's still games left to be played. All right. Texas A&M, again, they go and they handle Missouri, so the Aggies continue to roll. This is a team that you're looking like, okay, when are the wheels going to fall off? It's just like Miami. Texas A&M and Miami, very similar in perception where, hey, these teams are back. This is their year. And then it's like, the wheels fell off. They lost. They lost again. Texas A&M hasn't lost yet. They're still undefeated. Texas A&M is going to be in the college football playoff, and they're most likely going to be in Atlanta. Prepare yourselves for that. Mike Elko has done an outstanding job there. Marcel Reed, again, over 200 yards. He's had another great day. Dynamic quarterback. My concern with Texas A&M is their defense. If they get into a game with an Ohio State or with an Alabama, potentially an Indiana, a Notre Dame, how does our defense fare against an offense of that caliber? That's what I want to see for A&M. We saw it when they played Notre Dame. They gave up 40 points and a botched extra point and a missed holding call gets them a win in South Bend. We saw it against Arkansas, giving up 40 points. I just want to see how good Texas A&M's defense is now because those games were earlier in the season. If you're playing these games now in November and December, January, how is your defense going to be able to stack up against a formidable offense just like that? That's something that I want to see when it comes to Texas A&M. Okay. Like I told you, Vanderbilt, they escaped. Auburn, they continue to win. Miami, they also win. And why I'm talking about Miami winning is significant because who in the world is going to make the college football playoff from the ACC? Who in the world is going to play in that ACC championship game? All of a sudden, Louisville and Virginia both go down. We had Virginia on upset alert at playing Wake Forest. The game was at home. it was a fishy spread, and we're like, somebody knows something. Then you look at the spot Virginia's flirted with this all year. It's like, okay, this feels like it's going to be the week, and it was the week. So Virginia goes down, Louisville goes down. So Virginia and Louisville were the two highest ranked ACC teams. You had Georgia Tech sitting at 17, Miami at 18, Vanderbilt splitting them at 16. So now Georgia Tech, Miami both poised to move up in the rankings. Virginia, Louisville going to fall and slide down. So the higher ranked of Georgia Tech and Miami will be the team that is, in quotes, qualifying as the automatic qualifier as the highest ranked ACC team. Again, that game is going to be played out in the ACC championship game, which now the door opens for Miami. They still need more help, but Georgia Tech in a good spot. That conference race is a mess, a complete mess. So again, we're going to keep our eyes on that. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about here was my group of teams that could win the national championship. And I'm going to do this quickly, just as we're winding down the show. We're not going to get into any of the AP poll rankings. We're going to react to the college football playoff rankings after they come out Tuesday night. My teams that can win a national championship right now. Number one is going to be Ohio State. This is the number one ranked team in the country. They have the top defense in the country. They have an elite passing attack with Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate. Bo Jackson has been great at running back. Isaiah West is starting to come on strong. Ohio State dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. They were a little bit banged up against Purdue. Julian Sayin was sacked a couple of times, which rarely happens. He had to throw the ball away a couple of times, which rarely has to happen. So Ohio State needs to get healthy on the offensive line. That I think right now is their weakness, is that depth on the offensive line, just the health of them. So Ohio State, I think, can absolutely win the national championship. I think Alabama is another team that can win the national championship. Ty Simpson, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and Alabama's defense is starting to play a lot better. This is the Alabama team that I thought we'd see at the beginning of the year. That loss to Florida State is the Achilles heel to this team, but they've overcome it. They're past it. They still have one loss, only to Florida State. They have won 7 straight games. So Alabama is in a really, really good spot when it comes to heading to the college football playoff and contending for a national championship. Excuse me, they've won 8 straight games, Alabama. Kalen DeBoer has this team playing really well, and I think they match up. They have the talent on the roster. They have good coaching staff. I think Alabama is another team that can win the national title. My third team that I think can win the national title is going to be Notre Dame. They were there last year. They know what it takes to win multiple games in the college football playoff. They have an elite offense with C.J. Carr at quarterback. They've got a great set of receivers. They have the best running back tandem in the country, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I really like what Marcus Freeman has in South Bend, and no one's really talking about him to get to a national championship again, but just watch out, because Notre Dame is not going to have one of those top 6, 7 seeds. Notre Dame is probably going to be on the road in their first college football playoff game, but Notre Dame can absolutely win multiple games in the playoff and a national championship because that defense is starting to play better. Again, much like Texas A&M, how's that defense going to play against a top-rated team late in the season? That's what I want to see from Notre Dame. Texas A&M, another team I think can win the national championship. I just want to see that defense. I've already made that argument. And then Indiana, I think, is my 5th team. It's going to be matchup dependent for them. I want to see how they look if they play Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. That's going to be my barometer check for Indiana. I respect what Kirk Cignetти is doing. I respect Fernando Mendoza. I want to see how they fare and stack up in a talent-equated matchup game in late November, early December, before I can say they can go win a national championship. I think that they can, but it's going to be matchup dependent because, again, there's more parity this year in college football. It is, these teams are closer in terms of talent. They're closer in terms of gap, all of this stuff. So I think Indiana can win a national title. And then another team that I have on the fringe is going to be Georgia. And Georgia, because I have respect for Georgia, I respect Kirby Smart. The offense for Georgia is playing really well. But again, it's the defense. Why do you think we would be talking about Georgia and say like, oh, the defense is going to be the issue? Can they figure it out on defense? Never thought I'd have to make that argument, but I've been making it the entire season. That's why I picked Alabama to beat them. That's where they're susceptible. I don't know if a matchup against Ohio State, Alabama, or Notre Dame is going to be favorable for Georgia. I don't know that a matchup against Indiana would be favorable for Georgia outside of maybe a depth advantage. So Georgia is really matchup dependent on if they can win a national title because they absolutely have talent. but they're going to need some help and things to go their way in these games unless they can figure out a way to shore up and tighten up that defense on the backside. So those are my teams right now that can win a national championship. Again, that list may continue to evolve as the season wears on, more results happen. And then again, once the bracket comes out, we'll have full coverage for you there. Give us lots of predictions. We'll get into a lot of it, but we're not going to run through hypothetical land right now on a Monday show. But guys, that was the week 11 recap show. Appreciate you listening. Make sure you're checking us out on social media at Saturday Cadence and at T Silver Bulletin. If you want to follow me at Blake Biscardi, that is going to be on Twitter and TikTok. Lots of fun things happening on TikTok. A little bit more behind the scenes content side of things you're going to find there. Also, our YouTube channel. Check out the YouTube at Saturday Cadence on YouTube. Guys, again, thank you for tuning into today's show. We will see you on the Thursday show. We'll see you after the college football rankings when we react to them, and we'll see you on Thursday. God bless.